11th, 2021 meeting of the Rotary Club of Raleigh. This is our second meeting of 2021. And of course, it would be remiss of me not to at least acknowledge that since the last time we got together, there was a bit of a to-do that occurred in our nation's capital last week. This is a nonpartisan organization, but I think it's fair to say that one thing we can all agree on as Americans and Rotarians is that the way we resolve our differences here in the United States is through debate, elections, and respect for the rule of law, and not through violent attacks on our capital. And so, in trying to think of an appropriate way to respond to what happened last week in terms of, our position as Rotarians, one thing that I thought about was the four-way test. And if you recall, the four-way test is something that was developed by an executive of an aluminum company who was looking for a way to make an ethical yardstick as a way to measure the thoughts, words, and actions of his employees. And they found out that it helped revitalize their company when they began acting in accordance with sort of this high set of ethical standards. This week and certainly the events over the past summer and this past year have reminded us that we have an issue with community spirit. We have some issues in our country, and one place I think that we can begin to start healing those is through recommitting ourselves to the basic high standards and principles that were set forth in the four-way test. Before we speak, we need to be careful to pause, discern, and speak only the truth. We need to think about actions that are fair to all concerned and, are for the benefit of all. And we need to take actions that spread goodwill and better friendships. So I'll just leave it at that and tell all of you that I'm so glad that you're here today. And we have a wonderful meeting in store with Kenneth Howard from the North Carolina Museum of History. And so we'll go ahead and get started now with Richard Watkins with the invocation and the pledge.
Thank you, Eric. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. I must, however, disagree with W.B. Yeats, for it is only when the night is darkest that the full and complete brilliance of the stars can be seen. It is now more than ever that Rotary is needed, that you are needed. We provide service to others, promote integrity and advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace through our fellowship of business, professional, and community leaders. Together, we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe in our communities, and most importantly, in ourselves. For we are no better than the worst of us, and we are no greater than the least of us. It is, of course, ironic that the shorthand for our nation is US, us. No matter who you are or what you believe in, I see your eyes in my own reflection. I love you. May God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America. Would you please join me now for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Thank you, Sevelin. Eric?
Thank you so much, Richard. Always love to hear a W.B. Yeats reference, and I'm so happy, Sevelin, that you are back and feeling well enough to sing for us. That was a great way to start our program. If you have not heard enough from Richard, then I think we have a slide here. Richard is going to be sharing some information this evening on the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine. Here's the information. We're happy to share this with the group after the program. But Richard, thank you so much for all you're doing to help educate people about how we can get vaccinated and get beyond this, this virus here. All right. Does anybody have any happy dollars they want to share today? You know, I guess we had some nice sporting events over the weekend. Any takers?
Hey, this is Harrison.
Yeah.
I wanted to do a real quick happy dollar. Today's actually my wife's birthday, so I wanted to give her a happy birthday by donating some happy dollars.
That's great. Happy birthday to Harrison's wife. If you have any money to donate for the CART bucket for Alzheimer's research, please do that as well. You can send a message in the chat, or you can send an email to Linda. Next, we have an important announcement from Jim Dorsett.
Thank you, President Eric.
Yeah.
I think I'm unmuted now. So on behalf of the nominating committee, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the slate of nominees from your nominating committee. We feel this is a really powerful group of individuals who can serve as officers and members of the board of the Rotary Club of Raleigh during the 2021-2022 Rotary year that begins July 1, and can lead us forward with strength, continued strength into the future. This was the list that was circulated to you by Linda earlier last week for consideration. And let me provide that slate to you now. The following individuals have agreed to serve, and it is quite a commitment and of time and resources and effort. So we greatly appreciate the willingness of these individuals to serve our club. as we requested of them. First, the nominees are for president, will come as no surprise, Charles Edwards, who has served with this distinction as an officer for the past few years. For president-elect, our long-serving and I jokingly say long-suffering treasurer, Tom Packer. I've teased Tom about we're not going to let him give up his treasurer post, as he's taught himself to be a CPA and done a phenomenal job. President nominee, I'm so glad to report that Carrie Suffern has agreed to serve as president nominee and to eventually move up to the position of president of the Rotary Club of Raleigh. Carrie is now better situated in terms of her work and family circumstances with the children growing up, and is fully able and committed to serve and fill the role into which she has so graciously agreed to be placed now. Eric Stevens moves into the most enviable position of past president. So Eric Stevens is our nominee for the office of past president. I will move into an even more elevated state of being past president, Eric. So I'm looking forward to you replacing me in this officer role, with some mixed feelings, I must say. I'll continue to be involved. Administration.
I'm certainly looking forward to joining your role.
Richard Watkins has done a phenomenal job with administration, and we've asked him to continue in that role. He is extremely busy with his work at UNC and his other volunteer role and his family commitments, but he has graciously agreed to continue to lead our administration. Similarly, Elsa Silverman has agreed to continue to serve as our secretary. Elsa faithfully attends all of our extremely long board meetings and takes copious notes, which she distills into accurate minutes. And these are extremely helpful to the board and to the officers. For service, we've nominated Nicolette Fulton, and many of you have seen Nicolette and her devotion to service for our club through the book drive and otherwise. We're very excited that Nicolette has agreed to serve as chair of our service committee. Harrison Turner, despite having a new baby and young family and promotion with North State Bank, has graciously agreed to serve in membership. Harrison will come in for Christy Santacana, who served successfully and well for many years as head of our membership effort. And our membership has flourished under Christy's tenure, and we look forward to continued excellence under the leadership of Harrison Turner. Fundraising, Gina Yacone has served so well in service that we offered her the position in fundraising, and as a new challenge for her. And Gina is never one to say no. She enthusiastically agreed. And so Gina will be taking over fundraising for Alex Kinsinger. And Alex, as everyone knows, has done a really heroic job in fundraising. We had a very successful event just recently, and despite COVID and the shutdown, we've had successful fundraising events that Nicolette has organized and led, and we thank her for her service. But she has a challenging new position at work and other commitments and needs a break. We're not gonna let Christy and Alex go far. They have too much talent and ability that we're going to keep them in the saddle, but we are giving them a break here. And I'm very pleased that Charlie Davis, after working with Tom Packer, has agreed to be our treasurer. And this is a really, really tough job. And several of you have done it. Tom Holder and others of you have served. This is really a lot of hard work. to keep up with the finances, not only of the club, but also our foundation, and keep a budget and keep us on track and on budget and produce reports for the board. It's challenging work. Charlie has already been helping with this for many months and has demonstrated his ability to be our treasurer. New generations. Corey Fuse served ably and well. And we're also giving Corey, after his excellent work of several years, a breather for his new challenges in his promotion at work as a leading salesman for his company. And Bryant Robbins has graciously agreed to serve as chair for New Generations. Eric Larson has overseen our club's foundation grow. We're now well over $600,000 in principal, despite the grants that we make to any number of worthy organizations during a given year. So we can't let Eric go far, and Eric has agreed to continue to be the president of our foundation. And finally, at large, we need a board member who can lend his wisdom and guidance and insight and efforts to the board. And we can't think of anyone better than Mark Hackett, with all of his vast experience in service and the way he has helped to nurture our startup club, the Southeast Raleigh Rotary Club. And Mark has agreed to continue in the saddle to be our at-large member. So pursuant to our bylaws and constitution, we propose on behalf of the nominating committee the aforementioned slate of nominees for positions as officers or members of the board of the Rotary Club of Raleigh. And Mr. President, I put forth the slate as in the form of a motion for approval following any discussion.
Jim, one item of discussion is, I believe that somehow we left Valerie Evans as head of PR off of our list, and
Right.
she was about to slither out of those duties, and hopefully we're not going to let her do that.
Yes, I don't know how we left that off, but
And I thought I was going to have some time off.
Valerie has done. I know Valerie had a moment there of thinking that she might finally get some relief.
Yes.
But Valerie has done too great a job with PR and as our web page master, and we're not letting her get away at all. So Valerie is most definitely on the list, and I see that Linda's adding that for. All right, thank you. Thank you, Valerie. You're sort of on the spot here. You can't really say no at this point. So, Mr. President, thank you. With that modification, I move approval of the slate.
Thank you, Jim. Do we have any nominations from the floor for any of these positions? And the floor meaning from anyone out there in Zoom land in this particular situation. All right, and do we have any discussion about these nominees?
Eric, we did not have Charlie Davis on there for upcoming treasurer.
Okay.
We called it finance.
Yeah.
He's there.
Oh, okay.
On there,
There he is. Right. Someone said they didn't see him. Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Sorry, Linda.
We already exceeded our quota of mistakes with leaving. All right, any further discussion about the slate of nominees for next year? We very much appreciate all of these people for stepping up. And, I want to add an additional word of thanks to Christy and Alex and Jim for their service to the board and to our club this past year. We couldn't have done what we've done, and we can't do what we're continuing to do for the rest of this Rotary year without them. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, do we have a motion to approve this slate of directors?
I move that we approve this slate of directors.
Okay. And we do also want to thank Corey Fuse for his work with New Generations this year. Do we have a second?
I'll second. This is
All
Randy.
right. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, thank you very much. We have approved a wonderful group of leaders for the Rotary Club for 2021, 2022.
Great.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone. All right. Next on the agenda, I believe we have a special presentation from Eric Larson.
Yeah, thank you, President Eric. And speaking of great leaders, we're going to talk about a great leader in just a minute. And that would be Charles Edwards. As a lot of you know, when you make a significant contribution to the Rotary International Foundation, you are honored with an award called a Paul Harris Fellowship. And incoming President Charles Edwards has followed that pathway 4 times now. He has made his 4th level of Paul Harris Fellowship, and he has made that contribution. So he's being honored with a Paul Harris Fellowship today. His Paul Harris +3 is the vernacular that's used. We always like to talk about what is accomplished by the Rotary International Foundation around the world when we have one of these moments. And very appropriately today, we're going to talk about a project that originated in Scotland, because Charles, besides being a proud American and a proud Canadian, is also a proud person of Scottish descent, member of the St. Andrews Society. And so we're going to talk about a Rotary Club in Whitburn in Scotland. And in the town of Whitburn, the Rotary Club there decided they wanted to do a massive project, or a significant project that affected somewhere else in the world. So they worked with Rotary International and the Rotary International Foundation, and they began collecting eyeglasses that people didn't need anymore. And they worked to get those eyeglasses. They got them organized, they got them packaged, and then they got them sent to Africa, where people there who had no access to corrective lenses were now able to have the gift of sight and corrected sight. To date, that program has sent 30,000 pair of glasses to Africa. And in addition, a little side note, they have also removed 30,000 pair of glasses from landfills. And if you know anything about decomposition and landfills and things like that, eyeglasses basically never decay. And so they've saved that waste as well. So in recognition of his gift to the Rotary International Foundation and the work that Rotary does around the world, we're pleased to announce that Charles Edwards is our latest Paul Harris Fellow. I believe he has a pin either sent to him, or he might even be able to show it to us. There we go. And so congratulations to Charles. Let's all give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Art.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Charles. I always love to hear those Paul Harris presentations. Eric, you do such a great job with those, and I hope all of you Paul Harris fellows out there realize how much good you're doing through your donations, and I hope everyone will consider what they can do to continue to support the Rotary International Foundation. All right, next.
Excuse me, Eric, we do have some guests to introduce.
Right.
Nicolette and Christy and Harrison all have some guests to introduce.
All right, Nicolette.
So my guest is Kent Thompson. You all may recall him from a few years back when he was a member of the Raleigh Rotary Club. He's now a member of the Cary Rotary Club, but please do not hold that against him. He is a financial advisor with the Capital Financial Solutions, and I invited him here to come back to the Raleigh Rotary Club for a wonderful luncheon.
Yes, the meal today is without parallel.
Well, he did recall, a wonderful lunch at City Club, and I had to give him the bad news.
Well, we'll be serving a Jubilee lunch here at one of the upcoming meetings, so we can invite him back for that, and he can at least go and pick up a lunch that he can enjoy while the Zoom meeting is taking place. Thank you, Nicolette. And Christy, will you introduce your guest?
Yeah, actually, I will let Harrison introduce Billy Fiddler. He has reached out to me to invite him to this meeting, so I know he knows him through work. So I'll let you take this one, Harrison.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I want to thank Billy for coming today. So Billy Fiddler is his first Rotary meeting. His father actually is a Rotarian currently, and that's how he got connected. Billy and I have had an opportunity to work together in the past, and he reached out to me after finding out that I was a Rotarian and wanted to hear more about the club. So one thing that Billy doesn't know, though, is that he will be a Rotarian. He just doesn't know it yet. Billy, he actually works for, he is a client service consultant for Phreesia, which is a healthcare software system company that's actually located here in Raleigh. So Billy's so happy to have you on the Zoom call today.
Great. Welcome, Billy. And do we have any other guests?
Yes. Christy, is your mic on? Christy,
you're muted.
Christy, do you want to unmute?
There we go. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So we also have Tyler Crisco today, and he's with Youngmore Attorneys. And he's also interested in joining. So we are excited to have him here today. And Tyler, if you want to say any words, you are welcome to as well. But we definitely are looking forward to having you attend some more meetings and join our club as well.
Yes, this is Tyler. This is my third time visiting with you all, and I have enjoyed it so far. So I am looking forward to joining.
Welcome, Tyler.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us again, and you are welcome anytime. All right, Christy, do you want to go ahead and continue now with your membership update?
Sure. Just a brief one today. Just a reminder that we have our next virtual social on Thursday, January 28th at 5:30. It'll be our usual social last Thursday of the month. So we've been having a great time at those. A good number of us will attend and just have a beverage of your choice via Zoom. It's great to connect with everybody after hours and just in a casual setting. So mark your calendars, and I hope a lot of y'all can attend. That's it today.
Thanks a lot, Christy. And do we have Gina here to give us a report on service?
Gina is skipping today.
Okay.
Yeah, no report. Everybody heard enough from me last week. I'm giving everybody a break. Happy Monday, though.
Happy Monday, Gina. Thank you so much. And do we want Mike Toddy to take up the challenge of talking up the Cleveland Browns at all?
Challenge me for the playoff drought, both in appearance and wins, and I accept. So I will make a $26 donation for 26 happy dollars and a late evening of yelling at the TV.
Mike, as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I still have to tell you congratulations on last night. It was tough, but congratulations.
Thank you.
And as another Steelers fan, you better represent the AFC North and make it all the way to the Super Bowl and win it.
I'm happy to do that. We'll gladly take that asterisk.
Okay.
That sounds good. I'm glad there's some nice comedy there up in the industrial Midwest. All right. Happy birthday to Gene Boyles and Holmes Harden on the 13th and 14th coming up. I guess that's tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday. And now let's move on to our program. Richard, would you like to announce our speaker?
Yes, absolutely. I'm very excited about today's speaker for a wide variety of reasons. Primarily because I love history. I'm a huge, huge fan of history. Now, don't ask me like any questions to test, my appreciation of history. I just like a good historical documentary. And I was very excited, especially since we're living through historic times and every day it seems that we're making history. I thought that today's speaker was just so apropos for the moment. And that is Ken Howard, the director of the North Carolina Museum of History. Ken Howard has been the director of the NC Museum of History since 2007. He directs operations for the 7 state history museums and directly oversees management and operations for the flagship museum in Raleigh. Working with a staff of more than 100 employees, Howard is responsible for all exhibits and educational programming at the museums and for leading the management of a collection of 150,000 artifacts. Prior to his work at the Museum of History, Howard served in executive positions at a number of companies, including A4 Health Systems in Cary, where he directed sales and operations for acute care divisions, as Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Medic Computer Systems Incorporated in Raleigh, and as attorney for Burroughs Group in Detroit, Michigan. Howard holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I knew there was something great about this individual. And a Juris Doctorate from Wake Forest University. I think that's Eric. University School of Law. He is a member of the State Bar of Michigan, St. Mary's School Board of Trustees in Raleigh, the Wake Forest University Law School Board of Visitors, and serves on the board of directors of Westbrook Technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, please give your undivided attention and welcome Ken Howard to the Rotary Club of Raleigh. Ken, thank you very much for being with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. That's a great introduction, and you're trying to steal some of my information there. We're talking about artifacts there, Richard. So let me get started. I only have about 400 slides, so I think we'll be through here in about 2 hours. I know Bill Sigmund, they'll be in his nap time, so I want to try and get through before we do. But let me go ahead and get started and bring up my presentation. Can everybody see that?
No, did you share your screen?
I thought I did. Let me try it again.
Yeah, because I've made you co-host.
Okay.
Give it the old school try. Yep, there. Now it's up. Thank you.
Okay, got it now. All right, great. Well, again, I appreciate your time today. As Rotary Club has a mission of service to the community, our Museum of History has a mission of collecting and preserving artifacts of North Carolina history and educating the public of the state and the public in general on the history of our great state through exhibits, through programs, lectures, all types of information on our websites. We do all types of outreach to schools with lesson plans and all kinds of things. So our goal is to collect and preserve and educate on the history of our great state. As mentioned, we have actually 7 museums in North Carolina. We have certainly the North Carolina Museum of History here in Raleigh, but we have the Museum of the Albemarle in Elizabeth City, the Museum of the Cape Fear in Fayetteville, Museum of Mount Gateway Museum in Old Fort, the Graveyard of the Atlantic in Hatteras, and maritime museums in both Beaufort and Southport. And while we focus on the general state history here, the other museums focus on regional and or maritime history. So Elizabeth City, they focus on history of northeastern North Carolina. The Fayetteville Museum focuses on that region of Fayetteville and Lumberton and down that way. Old Fort up in the Mountain Gateway Museum focuses on, again, our Western heritage and culture in the western part of the state. The museum in Hatteras obviously focuses on the Graveyard of the Atlantic as well as the history of the Outer Banks. Beaufort focuses on obviously the mid-Atlantic or mid-Atlantic mid part of the state, their maritime history, and it happens also to be the repository for the Queen Anne's Revenge artifacts. For those of you who may be aware that Blackbeard wrecked his ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, right off of Beaufort in 1718. And that ship was discovered in 1996, and they've been bringing up artifacts ever since. And we have a very large display of those artifacts down at the Beaufort Museum. In Southport, they tend to focus on the Cape Fear region, and they talk about blockade runners, and they talk about early history of settlement of that area and the maritime history of that area as well. The museum here in Raleigh was founded in 1902 by Fred Oles. Fred Oles had actually been an editor of the News and Observer. He started collecting artifacts from all 100 counties across the state. And again, the museum was established in 1902. It's been accredited by the American Association of Museums since 1972, and we've been an affiliate of the Smithsonian since 2006. And this allows us to share programs with the Smithsonian, to borrow artifacts and share exhibitions and other things. So it's a great partnership that we have with the Smithsonian. And as you heard earlier, we have over 150,000 artifacts in our collection representing over 6 centuries of North Carolina history. The museum has had some great achievements. 2020 was obviously a little bit of a lesser year for visitation, but in 2019, we had over 450,000 people visit our museum, including over 80,000 school children from across the state. Our outreach programs reach over 90,000 school children across the state. Not everybody can come to the museum, so we do a lot of programs, live streaming education programs, history in a box kits, and all kinds of things that we send out across the state. When the museum closed in March due to COVID, we went to an online approach and put a lot of our programs online. And if you go to our History at Home webpage, you'll find there are lots of activities, virtual tours of the museum, and other activities and things. And since they put that online, we've been viewed by over 122,000 people have used some of the resources that we have on our webpage. Our 2 big festivals that we have every year are American Indian Heritage Celebration and African American Cultural Celebration. Celebrate the history and culture of those 2 peoples. We try to, again, we do those in the past. We've done those in person. The American Indian Heritage Celebration, it usually has anywhere from 10 to 12,000 people attending, and the African American Cultural Celebration has a like amount. This year we've had to go virtual. In November, we had over 18,000 people virtually view our American Indian Heritage Celebration, and our African American Cultural Celebration is coming up at the end of this month. So we expect some good numbers for that too. As I mentioned, we do a lot of long distance learning, reaching out to thousands of students across the state. Again, because schools closed, we went to our webpage approach and did a lot of virtual tours, educational films, podcasts. We came up with activities that students could do at home, lesson plans, and even recipes. So there's a lot of information we put out on our website to, again, encourage people to learn more about history, even though the museum was closed. We've also gone to 2 online lecture series. One is called History and Highballs, and it's a 7 o'clock in the evening lecture series. It starts with a drink recipe that you can engage or enjoy a libation while you hear a talk on some historical topic or maybe a historical place. And we have another one called History at High Noon that we do twice a month at noon. And again, these are also history lectures that take place at high noon, and again, allow you to dial in via Zoom and use those things. We're pleased to partner with the Society of the Cincinnati. The North Carolina Society sponsors our American Revolution Lecture Series, which is held every February. We have one coming up this next month. This next month will feature Jack Warner, who's Executive Director of the National Society of Cincinnati, talking about the causes of the revolution. So we hope you'll be able to join us for that, because again, it is on Zoom and it's accessible by lots of people. As I mentioned earlier, our American Indian Heritage Celebration and their African American Cultural Celebration are also virtual. These programs feature, again, music, dance, history lessons, all types of presentations. And it's, again, they've been a very successful series. This year is our 20th anniversary of the African American Cultural Celebration. And in November, it was the 25th anniversary of the American Indian Heritage Celebration. We have a Tar Heel Junior Historian Program. These are like history clubs spread across the state. Before the COVID, we had over 10,000 members spread across the state in various history clubs. And again, we continue to promote that. That program's been going on since the 1950s. And there's just lots of great things that that program accomplishes across the state. For more information on any of our programs, please be sure to visit our website, ncmuseumofhistory.org. Let's talk a little bit about what exhibits we have. The museum reopened to the public in September. Our visitation has slowly been increasing. We were very pleased to have a good number of people come in over the holidays. Our newest exhibit is Beach Music, Making Waves in the Carolinas. So those of you that know a little bit about beach music, it's a great exhibit. You have to start a thing is our exhibit on suffragettes and the 19th, the amendment that passed giving women the right to vote. Toy Boom is all about toys from the 1950s and 60s. It's a great exhibit for those of you that are my age. You remember all those toys that you had. Law and Justice celebrates 200 years of the North Carolina Supreme Court. And of course, we are the permanent home to the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame. Although we do not select the members of the Hall of Fame, we do have the exhibit of all the artifacts from the members of the Hall of Fame. And I'll show you a couple of slides of that. History in Every Direction is our little discovery gallery. This is where we display our award-winning prizes from the exhibits and programs from the Tar Heel Junior Historian Program, and also where we educate children on why do we study history. The Story of North Carolina is our flagship exhibit. I'll talk about that a little bit in more detail, but that tells, again, the history of our state in about 20,000 square feet. So again, those of you who are into beach music, we've got a great exhibit on beach music. And if you don't know how to shag, we've even got instructions and films to teach you how to shag. In addition to that, as I said, I mentioned our Toy Boom exhibit has been spectacular. We've had lots of people come see this exhibit because it, again, is those toys from the 50s and 60s that we all remember. So those of you who had the Rough Rider BB gun and all of those things, or Twister or Slinky or the 8-ball, all of those toys are on display, as well as many, many others. Again, as I mentioned, Law and Justice, the Supreme Court of North Carolina, this focuses on the 200 years of the North Carolina Supreme Court. We're very pleased to work with the Supreme Court of North Carolina to put this exhibit together. And it's really informational. This exhibit will only be up until about the 1st of April. So if you haven't seen it, please come take a look at it. And of course, as I mentioned, we have the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame. Here we talk about all things sports related in North Carolina. So all the different players, the football players, the baseball players, the basketball players, a lot of this information, and all the sportscasters and coaches. There's so much information in this exhibit. It really is a great place to learn about sports in North Carolina. Let's talk a little bit about the story of North Carolina. Again, this is our largest exhibit. It covers over 14,000 years of North Carolina's history, beginning with their earliest Native Americans and continuing up through the 1960s. At 20,000 square feet, it's the largest exhibit the museum has ever produced, and it's trolled in a chronological fashion. So when we start the exhibit, we start talking about the American Indians, or the Native Americans, who lived here over 10,000 years ago. We talk about how they lived. We have examples of reconstructions or reproductions of the huts that the Piedmont Indians lived in. And our oldest artifact is this canoe that's over 2,500 years old. If you remember John White, who was one of the founders of the Lost Colony, and he was the governor, well, when he came over in actually 1585, he came earlier and did a lot of drawings of the Native Americans that he saw at that time. This particular drawing that you see behind you is a reprint of that drawing, and it shows that canoe, which is exactly the canoe in front of you, or a similar canoe. So again, these canoes were used up at Lake Phelps, many of them. They're still there. A lot of them were left in the water, but this particular one was taken out of Lake Phelps many years ago and brought to the museum. Again, it's over 2,500 years old. You can't talk about North Carolina history without talking about Blackbeard and pirates. And so we obviously talk about piracy in North Carolina and the famous pirates, Blackbeard being the most famous. And we also display some of the artifacts that came off of the Queen Anne's Revenge. So some cannons, some pewter plates, and other things that were taken off of the wreck are included in our exhibit. We also talk a lot about where North Carolinians came from. In addition to the Native Americans, who else came here? So the English, the Germans, the Scotch Irish, obviously the African Americans. So we talk a little bit during this exhibit about where all these people came from and what did they bring to the colony back then. Obviously, we need to talk about the Revolution. North Carolina had a very prominent part in the Revolution with the battle at Morris Creek in 1776. So we talk a little bit about the Revolution as well, and we also focus on all the different battles that took place in North Carolina. Of course, the Halifax Resolves were earlier than the Declaration of Independence, and so North Carolina is very proud to be one of the first states to talk about independence. One of the unique things we have, if you've been in the Capitol, you have seen that statue of George Washington dressed as Cincinnatus, the Roman general who, after his war, went back to his farm and did not become emperor. The statue in the original Capitol was done in 1820, but when the Capitol burned in 1835, the roof collapsed and destroyed the statue. A new statue was not put in until 1970, but we have the model of the statue that was actually done back in the 1800s and was used for the model. This was discovered in the early 1900s in Italy and then given to North Carolina, and we're happy to display it here at our museum. You know, North Carolina early on was very much an agricultural state. So one of the things we talk about are all the different small farms and things are in North Carolina. And we are pleased to have the fourth oldest house in North Carolina as the largest exhibit or the largest artifact in our exhibits. The Robeson House started out looking like this. It was discovered in a field and down near Greenville and was saved and taken to the museum and reconstructed and put back together to give people an idea of how people were living. The first part of this house was built in 1742 and then was added on to in 1750. And in the interior of the house, we actually show the furniture that people used back then, how they lived, and how the floors and the walls were paneled. As we move into the 1830s and 1840s, we talk about the different social order of North Carolina. You had your yeoman farmers, you had your planters, you had your enslaved persons, you had your tradesmen. And so we talk a lot about that. And our second largest artifact in our collection is a slave cabin from 1860, again, from down the eastern part of the state. This particular slave cabin housed 7 people at the time it was built. And so we talk about that as well in the history of North Carolina. Of course, the Civil War being a very large component of our collection. In the early 1900s, when Fred Olds started collecting artifacts, we had a lot of the Civil War veterans who were passing away, and their families had things they wanted to donate. So we have a very large collection of Civil War artifacts at the museum. In fact, we have the 3rd largest battle flag collection of any museum in the country. And so we have a pretty large section of the exhibit talks about the Civil War in North Carolina. Obviously, we want to talk about what happened after the Civil War. So we talk about Reconstruction, and we talk about the Wilmington riot, of the coup d'etat in Wilmington in 1898, where they overthrew an elected government. So again, not pleasant history, but history that needs to be told and has to be told. And so we talk about these things as well. As we move into the early 1900s, we start talking about the industrialization of North Carolina. We talk about the tobacco plants and the textile plants and the furniture plants. And we talk about the fact that North Carolina was the home to flight. So again, we have in this part of the exhibit, we also have our reproduction of the 1903 Wright Flyer that talks about all about how the Wright brothers came to North Carolina. And textile mills being huge. We've put together a collection, a little bit of a textile mill to give you an idea. When you walk in the room, the floor shakes and lint blows up in the window, to give you an idea of exactly what working in a textile mill would have been like in the early 1900s. Of course, we have to talk about the Depression and how North Carolina suffered through the Depression in the late 1920s and 30s, but how a lot of the folk art grew out of this program, out of the Depression. So we have a very large pottery collection, for instance, where pottery became very important in North Carolina during that time period as a way to earn money. As we move into the World War II era, many of you may not realize that North Carolina trained more soldiers in our state than any other state in the Union. We had bases all over the place, and obviously continued to have Fort Bragg and Camp Lejeune and Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in our state. But military history is very important to North Carolina, and so we talk about that as well. We also talk about how close the war came to North Carolina. Many of you may not realize that the U-boats were right off the coast of North Carolina in 1942, and were sinking more than 60 ships a month off of our coast. And people, residents of the coast down there, can still tell about seeing the flames and the fires on the distant horizon, where a tanker may have been torpedoed, or people washing ashore over at Ocracoke, dead sailors washing ashore in Ocracoke. So again, it was a very tough time, not only for the world, but also for North Carolina along our outer banks. And obviously we have to talk about, when we get into the 1960s, we talk about the sit-in at Woolworths. This particular Woolworths is from the one in Salisbury. As we all know, the first sit-in was in Greensboro, And that counter is held by the Smithsonian at their African American Museum in Washington. But this particular counter came out of the Woolworths in Salisbury, because after the sit-ins in Greensboro, people then moved out to other towns to do sit-ins. And Salisbury was the second or third one they went to after Greensboro. So we are glad to have that artifact and piece of history in our collection. Unfortunately, this is where the exhibit ends because we ran out of space. And so we hope to do something about that in the future, as I'll talk about in just a second. For those of you that may be looking for a place to eat, right now it's closed, but Sweet Tea and Cornbread is our restaurant here at the museum. And for those of you who know about Mama Dip's in Chapel Hill, well, Mama Dip's granddaughter, Tanya Council, is the proprietor of our Sweet Tea and Cornbread restaurant, and she serves some really great food. So hopefully we'll get reopened to the public as soon as state workers start coming back to downtown and we get more visitors coming to the museum. We'll be reopening our restaurant, but we hope you'll come enjoy it soon. As I've said, the story of North Carolina, which is our most important exhibit, ends in 1960 because we ran out of space. There's a need for us to renovate our current museum, not only to allow for a larger exhibit on the history of our state, but also to allow for more space for traveling exhibits. One of the things we did when I first got here, before the Story of North Carolina exhibit was built, is we did a fair number of traveling exhibits. We did one with the British Museum on the Lost Colony. We did one with the Mount Vernon on George Washington. Those traveling exhibits allow us to bring other types of history to our museum, but also allow us to charge an admission, because we are a free museum, but allow us to charge an admission to certain exhibits so that we can raise money to help pay for other exhibits. While we are a state museum, our salaries and our utilities are covered by the state. All of our money for programming and exhibits and festivals, that is all private money. So we either have to earn that income, which we do by renting the museum or doing traveling exhibits when we could, and also through our Museum of History Associates membership organization and our Museum of History Foundation, which raises money for the museum. So all the things you see us do are all done with private funds other than our salaries and our utilities. In addition to that, we continue to collect artifacts. We have 150,000, but we obviously keep collecting. So more storage space is needed for artifacts. We need more and better rental space, simply because, again, that does generate revenue for the museum to help us offset expenses for exhibits and programs and things. And we want to improve our visitor experience. We want to add more technology and more interactives to our museum. So all of those things mean that we want to transform our building. We've gotten some planning money from the legislature, and we propose to totally transform our building by moving our lobby from the Edenton Street end of the building down to the Jones Street end of the building. So here you see, this is what the museum will be looking like at the Jones Street end. This is what it currently looks like. Right now, it's something that we call Fletcher Garden. It's just a concrete garden with a bunch of pillars out there, and where our school kids eat lunch when they're here on a nice day. But we want to propose to totally transform the museum by building a new atrium where we want to display all of our Wright Brothers aircraft. The museum currently owns two Wright Brothers aircraft and has one on loan from the National Park Service. And we're getting another Wright Brothers aircraft that's being built for us to cover what the 1908 flyer looked like. So our goal is to have a huge Wright Brothers exhibit in this lobby. In addition, we're going to redo the Edenton Street end as well. Again, this is what the building currently looks like. We're going to push those walls all out to all the way to the columns and beyond to allow us to have more exhibit space. One thing we're short on. The North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame, for instance, is about 3,500 square feet. It sits on this end of the building. It's going to be expanded to about 7,000 or almost 8,000 square feet. So we can really tell the history of sports in North Carolina. In addition, we're going to be expanding the lobby level to allow us to have more room for the story of North Carolina. And we're also expanding the upper levels, the third floor, to gather more exhibit space as well. This is to give you an idea. If you're walking down the mall, this is kind of what the new museum or the renovated museum is going to look like. And again, to give you an idea of the inside, we're going to put an atrium, a mezzanine around the atrium that's at the current level for our current lobby. Our goal is to have a very open lobby. So if we want to do big events or rent the museum out for large dinners and things, there'll be a lot of space without columns all in between. Up here on the top is where our Wright Brothers exhibit will be, and you'll be able to stand in that exhibit and look at all of the different Wright Brothers aircraft, which represent the Wright Brothers' history in North Carolina from 1902 through 1911, when they flew their very last aircraft in North Carolina. Again, to give you an idea of the view from the Wright Brothers Gallery, what the new Atrium Lobby will look like. And then we're taking the current lobby and turning it into a much bigger exhibit on the history of the state. So right now, where we have a lot of open lobby space, we're going to enclose that in, and you'll have different galleries down here that will talk about North Carolina history. So we're going to go from a chronological based exhibit to one that focuses on different aspects of North Carolina history. So whether it be the decorative arts of North Carolina, or how we work in North Carolina, community, all those types of things, we're going to divide those up into different galleries so that somebody can come down and just visit a certain gallery they may be interested in without having to walk all the way through 20 or 30,000 square feet. So we're really adding a lot to the museum. We're currently approaching the legislature for more funds to complete our planning of the museum, and then we would hope to get money from the legislature in the near future after that to complete our project. It's about a 2.5-year project once we start building, and it's currently sitting at about a $140 million project. So it's a pretty substantial project. And we're hoping that maybe the state will come out with a bond or something that will help us along the way. But these are the things we have going on at the museum, and I'd like to see if anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much, Ken. I thoroughly enjoyed the presentation, and I am looking forward to the opportunity to go to sweet tea and cornbread. I'm a fan of Mama Dips, and if it is anything like Mama Dips, I am going to have to be rolled out of that restaurant after having eaten so much. So do we have any questions? I am trying to go through. I'll start off. I have a question. As somebody, with such a diverse background as yourself, what was it like transitioning from, working with medical companies to working with the History Museum? I mean, what was that transition like for you personally?
Richard, I've always been a fan of history and enjoyed history, and I had served on the board of the Associates, which was our museum membership group. So I really got to know the museum a little bit before I came. And again, I've always been a big fan of history museums, but it's very different working in state government than it is working in private enterprise. And so I think that was the one thing was that it is a little bit of bureaucracy and you just can't do all the things you'd like to do. But we've got a great staff, and I've been able to meet some great people. We have a distinguished lecture series that we've been having every May except for this past year. And so I've gotten to meet some really great people. We had Woodward and Bernstein come to a talk when we had our Watergate exhibit. And so we just had I've been able to meet some great folks and learn a lot of great things.
Eric Stephen asked, what is the hope for timeline for completing the renovations that you described?
So again, we hope to finish, if we can get funding to complete our construction drawings, our planning, that would happen by the end of 2022. And then we'd hope to start construction in early 2023, which would go until about 30 months. So probably about June of 2025 is when we would hope to be able to open the new renovated museum. We will close it for a period of time to allow the contractors to do what they need to do, but we're going to try and keep it open as long as we can. By the way, hours, just to let you know, we're open Tuesdays through Sundays from 9 to 5. On Sundays from 12 to 5, on Mondays through Saturdays, our 9 to 11 are for our autoimmune visitors and our visitors over age of 65. So, and then from 11 o'clock on, everybody is welcome to come. But we're glad that visitation is starting to pick back up.
Great. And I don't see any more questions, so I am actually going to take a privilege and ask one final one. As the director of the museum, what is your personal favorite exhibit? What is your favorite exhibit?
Right now, I tend to like beach music.
Excellent. Well, with that, thank you so much, Ken. I really appreciate it on behalf of everyone here at the Rotary Club of Raleigh. Thank you so much for what you do, and thank you for coming and speaking with us.
Richard, Thank you for having me, and it's my pleasure to see all of you, and I hope you'll come see the museum soon.
Thank you. Eric?
Thank you so much, Ken. That was just a wonderful presentation. Great information about the museum. For those of you who have not had the good fortune of visiting and touring the Museum of History, it's an absolutely wonderful facility. I, for one, was excited by and plan to join in on, a history and highballs presentation sometime pretty soon. That sounds good. And Ken, want you to know that you are welcome to join in on our meetings anytime. That includes once we are able to get back to meeting in person. We are just around the corner from you in the Wells Fargo building in the City Club. So please come and join us anytime. We would love to have you.
Well, thank you, Eric, and maybe I can get you guys to come meet at the museum sometime when you guys start back up again.
We will absolutely get that on the calendar. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. All right. That will conclude our program today, and we will end, as always, with the four-way test. So, of all the things we think, say, and do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all
concerned?
Third, will it build goodwill
And
better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial
to all concerned?
Words to live by in 2021. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye. Have a good week, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.